Hello, this is Gene. I'm going to talk about something a little different, what I used to talk about a lot on this channel. Probably started 18 months or 2 years ago when I actually called out David De Gea for not being the greatest goalkeeper in the world, and I got slated by full-time Devils. So I'm going to do something here that's similar in nature. There is somebody that has a huge following on YouTube. He has the most supported subscribers as an independent Manchester United web or YouTube site. Is the United Stand, but I'm talking about the person actually who runs the United Stand and his vitriol over the last 15 hours about Luke Shaw. Now, online he's known as Mark Goldbridge. He does not have he doesn't put out his normal name out there, which I have no issue with him. I mean, he has over 200,000 subscribers. I'm sure he doesn't want some of them come to his house if they have a different opinion than he does. Normally, he usually takes both sides of an argument. And as most people, when they're in Twitter, you kind of like lose that non-biased opinion that you have. When you're talking to people on a call-in show, you might go see both sides of an issue because he's the host and the moderator. But when he goes on Twitter, he has what I would call rose-colored glasses when it comes to Shaw. So I'm going to just say what I'm going to have to say about Shaw. I'm going to talk about Mark and his Twitter meltdown. About a week ago, I guess now, that because Manchester United got knocked out of the European Championship at the end of the interview that Jose Mourinho did, he had a bit of a meltdown about Sevilla and the players that he has, and there was no real thing about him saying anything bad about Shaw at that time. But Shaw did not play, and he wasn't even selected. So that was sitting there, and something was going on with that. And then after we actually beat Brighton and progressed to the semifinals of the FA Cup, Mourinho basically said that the team didn't play very well, except with a few exceptions, which were Lukaku and Matic, who, if you watch the game and you turn down the announcers and just listen to the game, I would say that Mourinho was 100% right about that. He had some things about McTominay that I thought he was a little over the top on. But again, he can do that. He's a manager, and apparently he thinks that Scott can take that type of criticism, let's say. And Shaw started that game, but he was subbed off at halftime. And everybody went crazy online when that happened, and because everybody wants to be in Shaw's side, which is fine. Just some background when it comes to Shaw and what I believe with him. I think before he got his injury, his leg injury, when he was on that side with Martial, that they looked like the future for Manchester United. And the way he played, and he was very fast, and he wasn't carrying any weight at that time. And there was always, and I would agree to a point with Mark, that there are players that don't look like they're a Greek god, okay? They don't look like Cristiano Ronaldo, let's say. But I assumed after he got out of his injury, he would be fine when he came back. And he had problems with Van Gaal. Van Gaal said he was never fit. This is all documented. And I think that when Jose got in there and got into the place where I think he was supposed to be, he was fit. And he said it last month, or actually about 2 months ago, he said that he could be one of the best in his position in the world. Between that time and when he actually came on against Crystal Palace, what happened? And clearly he gained weight. When I was watching that game, we were losing that game. They bring him on, and he played well in the second half, and we won the game. But you look at his midsection, he clearly had gained probably 10 or 15 pounds. And this is where we are right now. When you bring that up, and I try to do it in a rational way. I don't come in and say he's a fat slob and he shouldn't be playing the game. I said he clearly has been put on weight. And you have an old school manager like Jose Mourinho. He looks at that as a lack of effort. Whether or not he could still play the game at a high level, He's saying that you're not doing enough to be at the elite of the level, and he expects that from his players. But what guys like Mark Goldbridge and other things will do, they'll talk about Fellaini or anything like that. I'm talking about individually when you look at Luke Shaw, his attitude when it comes to his fitness, and this is nothing that Jose found out himself. He had that when he was under Pochettino, when he was at Southampton. He's been talked about this in the England team as well. This is nothing new for him. I don't know if he thinks he's above it, that he doesn't have to train as much as everybody else. He seems like he's the kind of that shows up right when he needs to be at training and leaves right at the time he can leave. There are stories about him having to be dragged in to put on the bus. That Fletcher had to do this at Manchester United and pull him on the bus because he was just straggling in the background to get on the bus. You can't have that when you're when you're playing for the greatest team in the world, the biggest team in the world. You have to have that motivation to be what it's going to be. But I am not here defending Mourinho because neither of us, as popular as this man is on the internet, and he has all these subscribers, he's no different than me. He's a fan of Manchester United. We have a different opinion when it comes here, and I think it should stop right there. But the problem is because he has been so butthurt by the trolls to a point, and guys like me that said that he is clearly not fit, that he's been just on this tirade on Twitter using loaded words that anybody that's against his view on Shaw, whether they're bullies. And I'm just watching all this stuff, and I'm just watching him just go down a meltdown, trying to defend Shaw when every coach he's been with has said that the guy has an attitude problem, that Van Gaal said he wasn't fit. I'm just saying if Mourinho came out, and hopefully he'll see this, Mourinho came out and said that this guy had the potential to be one of the great players at his position. So you're in training with him and all this time, and then 6 or 7 weeks later, maybe he should have played more often. I would have said the same thing. He's on against Crystal Palace, and he's carrying weight in the midsection. How can a player in a sport like this why would they allowed to do that? And he's having an excuse in saying that some players carry weight. The game has changed so much since Mark was a kid, and when I was a kid. You cannot run around in his position with weight there. It holds him back. And if you actually compare where he was before the injury and how he is now, and look how fast he is and how quickly he can make these moves, and he can't get back where he needs to be, you can see why this would upset somebody. He wasn't a manager. He came out and said, this guy could be the greatest. And he sees that he's not doing the work in training to stay in shape. It's shocking to me he ever got in against Crystal Palace when you saw how he looked. Now, I'm just going to go through some of his tweets here, and you can see what I'm trying to say. Most of them, when it all came out, and a lot of guys were saying he looks fat. He basically said it was bullying, and all that. Okay, he's from that area, that generation that say shit like this. If they get offended, people get offended. Sometimes I think that Mark is more of a conservative type of person. But it also looks like he's a normal SJW that certain things you can't talk about, and that's kind of disappointing. And it's a problem in Europe. It's a problem in England right now. And when his kids grow up, he's going to realize that he didn't stand up when he should have, and more important things in football. And he's going to say, "Why didn't I say something?" But anyway, you can watch the rest of my channel to talk about stuff like that. That's what I talk about here. But I am passionate when it comes to Manchester United. No player is bigger than the team, and certainly Shaw is not bigger than the team, and he's clearly not bigger than the manager of this team. I am 100% behind Jose Mourinho. I know exactly what he's trying to do here. We may not look like we did in the heyday that we had in the 1990s when we had all these great players early in the 2000s. We don't have that type of player right now. Maybe we will with Martial, maybe. That's a different debate. I'm talking about Shaw right here, so I'm just going to go through here. So what he basically does is he starts comparing the vitriol against Shaw about Rooney, because there was a time when Rooney was called, he looked like he was Shrek, and he looked like he was fat. And he never looked like he was fat to me. Even in his uniform, he never looked like he was carrying any weight, ever. He's a small, stocky guy anyway. Later in his career, he lost some more of that weight and got more tone, so he could continue on with his career. So he was comparing the vitriol against Rooney with Shaw here. So he's fat because he isn't playing as good as Rooney. He had a day off, and admit you have no reason to call him fat when you have no idea about his fitness levels. Somehow he thinks that having extra weight, fat, not just muscle or anything like that, doesn't affect his fitness levels, when he has no idea what Jose is seeing in training, and why he said this 6 weeks ago, saying he could be potentially a great player at a position, and he sees this in training. Come on. Don't be silly, and it's all Twitter call him fat and marketing with pictures of big fat things. I agree with him here. I don't think it's that. People like me that responded to his first salvos about this, defending Shaw for all things, didn't do this. Like, there are trolls out there, and most of those people are not Manchester United fans. Okay, these are people that are just trying to destroy our team unity right now. I don't understand. I looked through all his tweets. There's nothing about his attitude and all the stuff that every coach has said about before. Previous managers at our club have said the same thing about him, but apparently he won't say that. Then it goes on. This was 3 hours ago. Nonsense. Body fascism. Now, he didn't spell fascism, right? Without facts is bullying. So basically, saying that somebody is fat or who's carrying weight. I didn't ever say he was fat. I said he was carrying weight in his midsection, and it's infecting his play. And it shows a lack of effort to be elite. And if I was a coach, I would never even start him. I mean, if I would have saw him training like that, it just says in my mind, and again, that might be old school, but this is the whole thing, that if you're somewhat a little bit over where you should be, that you could still be fit. The game is different. This is not me playing on the ground on a Sunday league. This is Manchester United, and he's getting a lot of money to be fit. And he had been fit before. This idea he was never been fit is bullshit, and he should be able to say that. But he uses words, these loaded words like bullying, fascism. I mean, what's next? Loads of players have carried weights over the years. Different people do. Doesn't mean they're not fit. Again, I think he's remembering when he was growing up and guys used to just show up in the park and they were smoking the whole time, but they could still play the game. Luke Shaw will not be able to play at the level that he wants, that he potentially could be at if he's not in shape. He does his entire career, and all the stuff that's out there from the previous managers have said this, that he was never allowed, he had no criticism at all when he was at Southampton. He was basically told everything, that he was great, that no one ever said no to him. And when you do that, it happens in every other sport. It happens in the NBA here now. These kids are never told no. And he may have a certain attitude that, not that he's better than anybody else, but he always knows that with his talent, he could get away with what he needs to do. But still, at Southampton, they would needle him to get in shape. And now he's older now, and he's been doing this for a long time, and he still calls him a kid and all this stuff. That he's so young that he can't understand this. When he's been doing this has been his entire life. And there was a time in his career he looked fit. Now, you can be fit and you can be carrying weight, okay, and you can still play. There's no question about that. But before, when he was fit and thin and running fast and was doing the right thing and had the right positional awareness, now he's not as fast. He gets burned a little bit more, and he did in that first half against Brighton. He did. He allowed guys to get in a position to cross the ball, and clearly that upset Jose Mourinho. The point I'm trying to make with him, and I'm trying to be as respectful as I can, because I do support what he's trying to do in his channel. I do, and I watch him, and most of the time he will get both sides of the argument. But he has a blind spot here, and I don't know exactly why. Maybe it's because it's an English guy that's playing at Manchester United, and we don't have many of those anymore. We have a lot of more international players. I mean, that's how I feel about it when I watch him. It's just a different type of demographic on Manchester United that totally changed in the last 15 years. we're a global team, but also I would love to see more English players play in the first team. And we all know it's like every person that you know, boy, he's got a lot of potential. And yeah, and when you don't see it happening, some people still want to defend people like that and say, no, he's a good guy. He's gonna come good. And this is what I know. I think he could still, and I'm still a supporter of Shaw. And if I say he looks like he's carrying weight, and in my mind that means he's not fit. And I think that anybody is a manager, and I played the game, and I was a manager of the game. If a guy was not showing, he clearly is not doing something in training, because there's no reason why he should be carrying any weight. This is his vocation. It's his job, and it's like a fuck you basically to Jose Mourinho and the club. And I don't think that Mark sees this. And we have the proof that he has had this issue before when it comes to his attitude. And again, there's been times in his career he's looked like he's been fit. I didn't expect to see what I saw when he came on against Palace. I just saw him, and he was carrying weight around, he like a spare tire around his midsection. And I'm like, it'd be one thing if he had been hurt this entire time, like if you have a knee injury, that you do that. But he was training this time. How could he possibly be losing? How could he be gaining weight? What the fuck is he doing? And it's also against the rest of the team when you do stuff like that. Now, anyway, people will say that the team is divided because of this. That's all the different ABUs that are out there that want to destroy the team. And apparently this might happen. In this day and age, you can't really say things like this about the players. At some point, the manager will be fired. If this was Pogba and he said shit like this, and he didn't really say a whole lot about Shaw directly. He was more about talking about McTominay, but indirectly, people thought that he was talking about Shaw, and he probably was. And in his mind, this is how he thinks he has to motivate him. And if it doesn't work, that's fine. And maybe he can go and play for a smaller team. He can go back to Southampton, or he can play in Scotland, or he can play on the continent, and he'll have a great career. This is this whole issue that I hear about now about Mourinho, that he didn't do anything with De Bruyne, and he couldn't do anything with Hazard, and he couldn't do anything with Salah, and they went to different teams and they got better. Some players need to move on, and some players are not at the finished article to be at the highest level. Again, I'm not at the elite level as a manager as Jose Mourinho, but what I see is clear to me. There is ample proof that said that Shaw has had an issue with his attitude. Attitude leads to things like not being in shape. Just because you think you can still play the game at a high level and you're carrying weight when you have every opportunity to lose more of that weight and even play at a higher level, that shows that he has no real regard for his place on the team. So anyway, that's basically it on this, and I talked way too much, and I'm sure if he sees this, he'll say that here's a guy talking on the thing, and I should just call into his show, and maybe I will. I just think that he's off here. He can have his opinion. He can defend him all he wants, but when he starts calling out people because they have an opinion that it looks like to him that he doesn't look fit, and we're saying things he's carrying weight around his midsection, that now we're being called fascist for believing that way. That word, it's like everything else. When we talk about misogyny and racism and all that stuff, that shit needs to stop. We need to stop putting words in front of your argument that says something else. There's nothing about him saying, anybody saying that he's carrying weight, that's fascist. And it's nothing close to fascism when you're saying pictures about fat people, comparing it to Shaw. That's not fascist either. And I just wish he would understand that. And instead of just, I mean, clearly all over the media now, he's a public figure on YouTube, but all over the media they talked about all the meltdowns that Jose has been in the last couple of years or last couple of weeks. Clearly, Mark took a cue from Mourinho, and he had his own on Twitter last night. Okay, that's all I have. Let me know what you think below, and we can discuss it down below. And tell me if you think that, if you can, go back to Crystal Palace and look how he came on, and look, maybe it's just the camber puts on 10 pounds. I've been watching this guy for a long time. He looked like overweight for that game. Anyway, you guys have a good day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.